Hi, Dr. Page here. And so, I've talked over and over, I talk about the nervous system and how trauma negatively impacts it, right? So when we look at the nervous system, there's two ends. There's the sympathetic nervous system state, fight, flight, freezy, and parasympathetic nervous system state, which is our rest and recovery, and where we can drop into REM sleep, process out our emotions for the day, and have those wonderful dreams. Because if you're not dreaming, you're not actually recovering. So the next component of this is that when we endure trauma, we actually go into a torsion, right? So the dura mater sheath around the brain, the dura mater sheath around the spine actually tightens and actually twists us. And so when I very first started, about 10 years ago, I'd been in practice a couple of years, I met this amazing craniopath. His name was Dr. Bruce Davis. Met him in Brazil, speaking at a conference there. And I went up to Seattle. I left Colorado, went up to Seattle to do research with him. Because the research that he was doing as a craniopath, chiropractor, trained in adjusting the cranium and the spine, was that he found that when the stress and trauma occurred, mental, physical, spiritual, environmental, the body went into this torsion like a fighter stance. So whichever dominant hand you are, I'm right-handed, so I go in a torsion like this. And so what he showed me was the range of motion, right? So you take people's heads and show me that, hey, it's catching here. You're not getting full range of motion. And then when he showed flexibility, same thing. There was just not as much flexibility. But then when they would come in my office and we would reprocess the trauma or the stressor or the things that led to that injury, because these were particularly athletes, he would then show me their range of motion increased. And then he could do a treatment on them and the treatment stuck. So this is subconscious muscle guarding. So meaning subconscious, it's outside of our conscious control, which is about 95% of our everyday activity and who we are by the time we're 25. So we really only have about 5% of what we're doing, how we're reacting to things, how we're behaving, how we're performing is only about 5% within our conscious control. So when athletes endure trauma, because we know that trauma is held the same way, mental, physical, spiritual, or environmental, we go into that shock, we go into resetting our homeostasis, and we go into that fighter torsion stance, right? And we all know that we've been, as an athlete with lots of head injuries and a skier and some extreme sports that I've done, I would go in for a chiropractor adjustment and, it felt really great. But then I'd pop right back out of, and these are millimeters, a tiny, tiny little bit when we're talking about the skeletal system. But you would go back into that maladaptive survival muscle guarding state. And so this is what we start to see with athletes, whether it be them not being able to run as fast, swim as fast, them not having full range of motion, not being as flexible. The body's just in this muscle guarded, taut, tight state. So it's so very important. Again, we must go all the way back throughout someone's history and reprocess and then desensitize to these negative things occurring again when it comes to extreme sports or contact sports and getting hit again and throwing the back out or getting a concussion again or hurting the knee, hurting the shoulder, whatever that looks like. But we can actually get that subconscious muscle guarding to stop. So it's amazing. But again, if we're in this fight, flight, freeze state, high cortisol, the amygdala, the little pea size like alarm in our brain, triggering, oh no, this is bad. We are going into that torsion muscle guarding. And so you'll see some of your best athletes too. Like, I had an example of a skier one time where the individual had crashed and gotten a concussion on one spot of the downhill racing course, and then went there a year later and competed, and the body actually pulled up and muscle guarded, and she lost her form and she blew her knee out. She tore her ACL. And so it was really interesting with these concepts because the body just subconsciously will guard and go into kind of that fetal position or that survival pulling in and retracting, right? So trauma negatively impacts your entire skeletal system. It tightens that dura mater sheath. So you lose your range of motion. Your body doesn't work as well. You're not getting as much flexibility. And we know when we're forcing things, especially if we're in a contact sport and we're being pushed down onto the ground and almost going into the splits or something, we are at greater risk of getting hurt if our muscles are all tight and taut. So Muscle guarding subconsciously occurs from trauma, doesn't matter what type of trauma. Obviously, way worse before the age of 7 to 12 because we don't even make beta wave then. We go into an even stronger frozen muscle guarding survival space. Yeah, that's why we need to go all the way back through with alpha imprinting and reprocess things and reset that nervous system to being a more alpha brainwave, that flow state, so that we are not at greater risk of getting hurt, so we have full range of motion, so that we can take full advantage of even our training and our working out.